Today we are covering the Pauper challenges with the magical GN, who managed to obviously win the Sunday challenge for the third time, I think, in the weekends. So let's dive right in. Yo, yo, yo! Welcome back to Casting Commons, the show where we talk and discuss all things Pauper. I am your host, Teasdale, and this is my co-host, Dizzy Spell himself, Reese.
Hello.
Before we start, please do not forget to hit that like, subscribe, and follow button so you never miss an upload. It also helps the algorithm and gets great exposure. It is a really amazing way to support us for absolutely free. As you may notice, if you are watching this on YouTube or video on Spotify or whatever, you may see there is a big giant blue box in the middle of us. And that is because we are joined by the amazing and also extremely lucky GN42. Hey Paul, how you doing?
Extremely lucky. I've been doing well. Been extremely lucky these last few weeks, winning some challenges. But yeah, it's been going well.
You've obviously been testing a variety of different decks, playing all sorts of different things across the format. Even the deck that you've played, obviously you've tuned it so it's different every week. Is that where we're at? Is that about right?
Yep. I've been changing, like maybe one card, maybe two cards if I'm feeling bold in the sideboard. But yeah, no, the FAMS has been going well for me, working out well for me.
Just a little bit. So if you would like, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, explain obviously how you got into Pauper, all that sort of good stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm GN. I currently have a couple YouTube videos. I don't do YouTube that much, but I do stream my Sunday challenges on Twitch. And I started playing Pauper. I don't know when the year was, but it was like when Drake got downshifted. So I played that deck in paper for a little bit, and then it got banned, and I was very sad. And I stopped playing Pauper for a long time. And then in 2021, I moved to a new city, and they had Pauper locals, so they kind of wrote me into it. And then I got into Magic Online, and I just started playing a lot of Magic Online. And since then, I've been playing a lot of the Familiars deck.
Did you? I'm assuming you picked that up off the master, as I think I seen you obviously joined from Cali, and then you've obviously as Karate Kid and all that. The student becomes a master and all that sort of stuff. Is that where we're at, or not quite?
Yep, pretty much. I saw one of his videos. It was either like a how-to video or like a challenge one or something. And I just messaged him on Discord because I was like, "Hey, I can't figure out how to beat Tron with this deck." And he like gave me some tips and told me to join the Discord. And yeah, been learning from him mostly.
Not bad, not bad. Well, it's obviously proven valid and useful, obviously. So can't complain at that. So I guess we'll start. We'll start with yourself, obviously, GN. What have you been up to apart from obviously tearing up challenges this week? Magic related, just testing, or?
I think I played one league this week. One league and maybe two other matches that I like one dropped a league. So not a whole lot of Magic. Mostly I've just been playing the challenges. I haven't really had time for leagues during the weeks. I used to play a lot of leagues during the weekdays, but these days not so much.
That's on. Doesn't really matter. You don't really need any league experience when you've already mastered one deck and just rock up on a challenge and clearly works.
Well, I do think that like the skills you learn from playing a lot do transfer over to some point. At some point you don't have to play quite as much and still have the ability.
Yeah, I'm a bit off that, to be fair, but the more I play, the worse I get, it seems.
I feel that sometimes.
So what about you, Reese? What have you been up
to? Pretty chilled Magic week from me, to be honest. I haven't really done an awful lot. I've not played any Pauper at all, so letting the side down. But I have played a bit of Legacy, testing the new Simulacrum synthesizer from Thunder Junction, which is pretty good. Seems to have a lot of cards, just not for Pauper, just for every other format.
It's alright, Modern Horizons is next.
Yeah. To be fair, the set that they're slotted into Thunder Junction seems like Modern Horizons, like power level. All the cards are like nuts. It's like they should be just Commander League only, surely.
I didn't realise the Vault cards or the Big Score or whatever the cards that you're on about. I didn't realise the Standard League as well.
Yeah. It makes no sense to me.
I downloaded Arena this week I don't even know why. I think because I downloaded it on my phone and I was like, I wonder what I can do. I played one game and then someone went triple simulacrum synthesizer. I was like, I didn't even know this was even legal, and then I just uninstalled it. I was like, I'm done. That's enough arena for me.
Seems the correct choice.
Mm.
But yeah, apart from Legacy, I've like played a bit of EDH, but that's not really here or there. So yeah, pretty chill Magic wise. Hopefully back to some Pauper or more Magic next week.
Do you play much Eternal, GN, or like other formats other than Pauper, or are you just dedicated Pauper only?
Yeah, I play a lot of stuff. I try to not play Pioneer and Standard if possible, but I have a rental account, so I play like a lot of Legacy Delver. I just completed that deck in paper actually. I'm supposed to play a local on Tuesday. We'll see if that ends up happening or not. But yeah, so I enjoy a lot of Modern and Legacy and Vintage.
Not bad. So we'll see you triple win like Mogged in a few months' time, where you triple win the challenge. Is that what it is?
I'm terrible at all the other formats that are not Pauper, but I do my best. It's fun.
Yeah, sound. So.
What about you, J-Style? What have you been doing?
Not a lot really. Struggling on. Not played a lot of Pauper or anything really this week. I tried to play Mississippi River again for some reason. Don't know why. It was fun. And then I played one league versus one blue-black scam, and then it was like fun. The other decks were absolutely amazingly fun to like have these cool interactions. Like I think I versed, is it Strawberry Shortcake? I think I versed that twice in one league, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." Like,
wow.
I was like, "I'll take this," and then I was like, "That was actually enjoyable. Let's play another league." And then I versed 5 blue-black scams or 4 or something. And I was like, "Yep, back to not playing Legacy."
Wow.
Yeah.
Legacy is unfortunately not as varied as Pauper at the moment. It's very play Grief, play Force of Will, stick them together.
But other than that, that's about it. I was saying before we started recording that since Gardens has now become this Avenging Hunter / campfire pile and very mainstream, I've sort of fell out of like interest with it. So I've been now just trying to find a deck that I can like and learn. I've tried a league with FAMs this week. I did an amazing 1-4. That was great. What else did I try? I tried Tyrube Cycle Storm, like the blue-black version. 2-3 that one, and then I thought this was really unfun. I was like, half the sideboard choices were just like hard mode, and I'm like, yeah. I just look at the sideboards of these decks, and I'm like, this is so much like they're making it more difficult for zero reason. Like they have a mountain in the sideboard and then no actual artifact hit for like relic. They're just like, I'm gonna vision charm it away, and I'm like, just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. Not just wait. So that was my one big thing. And then Callie mentioned there's the black-red Cycle Storm with like Ingot Chewers and like Deadly Dispute in there. So I've been trying that. Yeah, I got reimbursed for the league because the Lotus Petal wouldn't tap for any other colour but white. That was great.
What?
Literally, I have no idea. Wouldn't let me undo. It was like almost like my W key was stuck, or like your auto tap mana. It was like that was stuck for some reason, but wouldn't let me Control Z undo it.
But only on Lotus Petal.
But only on the Lotus Petal, yeah. Odd. So, yeah. So then that ended up mattering because I had a Lotus Petal and then Songs of the Damned for like 15. I was like, well, I can't cast this then. So yeah, that was about as exciting as that's gone. So if you have any exciting decks, Jane, that you want to try, that's probably not FAMs because, I suck at that deck, let me know. I will try all sorts of piles because I'm feeling lost.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I feel like a lot of the decks in Pauper are really bad. Like, I don't know. It's tough to find a deck for me. I'm really lucky that I have FAMs.
So, would you like to move on to a bit of news? The standard spiel that we all know and love.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's do it.
So, Cast and Commons event is slowly approaching. It is on the 1st of June. It's like, 3 weeks away? Something like that? 3 weeks away. The Battle of the Bolts will be hosted in our area, the northwest of sunny Cumbria, with a £15 entry and a cut to top 8. The first player receives a Secret Lair Mountain Go, along with a pack per win for everyone. Also, there'll be additional prizes in the top 8 with a full art Magic Fest bolts. So please buy your tickets now, and the link will be in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled, obviously, on this amazing podcast and also on our Twitter page for the up-to-date information. So it'd be great to have you there. It'd be great to you flying over GN, making the trip.
Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it
Yes,
for the world.
exactly. If GN's coming, everyone else should too. The other things that were announced is Badger, the LPI International League has begun, and Badger in the UK, I believe, is the only shop or whatever hosting these for the International League for the Paupergeddon. This event is on the 20th of July, and their link of the tournament will be in the description below. There is all sorts of different, I think, a booster boxes to add, a player mat, all sorts of different goodies to check out. So please check out the description below if you are interested in going to sunny southern England. Also, there is other UK events. They are less important than the others, like Casting Commons Battle of Bolts is the most important, of course. But there's a surge of UK events recently, so please check out Pauper Dan on Twitter, because he does all the retweeting stuff that we can't be bothered doing. So check those out. And I guess finally the news, excitingly enough, Gavin or Ullman as well on Reddit as well, like, shared that this overdue video for the PFP update on the state of Pauper is coming in, I think, 2 weeks' time. I think it was last week that they said it. So we've got 2 weeks until we have an update announcement of the PFP, and I'm really excited to hear what they have to say.
I think they clarified as well, it is not a ban announcement. It is just an update on either what they're thinking about the format or what they're seeing.
My only thing is, I really don't understand why they have to put these in videos. Like, the amount of tweeted and Reddited about this video, they could have just said in those posts, this is what we think about the format.
Yeah, the videos are good to watch though. They're usually really well done.
Oh, they are. I'm not disputing they're well done, but they shouldn't take 6 weeks extra time than what they said they were going to take for us to hear what they think about the format.
Ideally, they just have a Twitter account and they could just tweet like, "Hey, we think the meta's fine," or "We think Mono Red's really good," or something like that.
Well, we asked Emma this obviously on the pod. I don't know if you heard, but basically she said there's a lot of like jumping through hoops for them to have like a joint Twitter account. Like they have to go through a lot of hoops to get that where they want it to be, and it is something they are looking at. But if it ever comes into fruition, is another question.
Yeah, I think the problem with that as well is a lot of the time it doesn't seem like they all agree with each other.
Yeah.
So if 5 of them say, "Oh, let's tweet this one thing," and then 2 of them are like, "Yeah, we don't think this is right," it sort of just gets a bit messy. But I guess that's the same for the video. Like they'll have to come together to unify for the video. But yeah,
odd indeed.
Yeah, that's fair.
Friday challenge. Then get started.
Yeah.
So the Friday challenge, which is the 32 challenge, on Friday the 3rd of May, had 59 players. First place was Corgates, second place was Jeskai Wildfire, third was Boros Glitters, fourth was Blue Black Fae, fifth was another copy of Jeskai Wildfire, sixth was Kuldotha, seventh was Gardens, eighth was Blue Black Terror, and then the 2 near misses, ninth was Jeskai Glitters, and 10th was Gardens. I guess we'll start with GN. What are you feeling about this top 8/top 10?
I mean, it seems pretty great as far as like the diversity is concerned. It was kind of weird. We had this metagame where like blue-white glitters was like the deck to beat, and then people played blue-black fairies to beat up on that, and then people played Boros glitters to beat up on that, and now people are just playing whatever they want, it seems like.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Interesting, this Coggates list is playing Swirling Sandstorm in the sideboard, which I've seen before, but I don't know exactly why you do that. I guess that's for terror or walls or something. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
but I know this player is very good.
Oh yeah, Twister. Yeah, we see Twister quite a lot. But yeah, the Sandstorm I always saw as like a terror answer. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think you're that like too scared of terror for Corgates, but I guess one answer's fine.
I also think it's probably too slow for anything.
Well, the issue is that the problem is that you're boarding in a 4-mana sorcery against the quad Spellpierce deck, so it's like kind of awkward, but
yeah.
Very, very awkward. But like I say, like it could be against walls, but surely this is just too slow, right? Like if against walls, if you're trying to fill your graveyard, you not only get threshold, but then also then cast your 4 mana sorcery. You must be already ahead anyways to survive to that point, surely. Because you don't have much interaction. You've literally got, what, 4 counter spells? I don't know.
Yeah, you bring in your Red Blast against them usually, but yeah, it's pretty rough.
It's secretly against Dredge.
Is that what it is?
Honest. But yeah, I think for me, this obviously the diversity wise, it's definitely there for this top 10. It does seem very control heavy though. Like there's essentially like the Kuldotha, the sort of the Terror, and then the Glitters that aren't control decks, and then just like two Jeskai decks, Core Gates, Gardens, Fear, another Gardens. Yeah, it is definitely like top heavy with control at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit strange. It's definitely more top end. Like it's very mid range control. Like obviously there's no real. You've only got the. I wouldn't actually say you've got you got the Kuldotha as an aggressive deck. Like the Glitters deck's also like a mid range deck that just coincidentally has Glitters.
Yeah.
But it is very top end heavier than what we've previously seen. Like usually we've seen like one hard control deck, like like the Jeskai Ephemerate or whatever sneaking into the top 8, but it's very much a lot slower, and it's just people playing, as JN says, they're just playing whatever they want here.
The Glitters deck as well is the Glitters deck that you pull out if you want to go against a bunch of control decks. So yeah, pretty interesting. Obviously, still very diverse. Pauper at the moment, you can pretty much play whatever you want, and if you know that deck, you can do well. But yeah, quite a control heavy like top end of the challenge.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think the only thing that's interesting to me is obviously one side that I have noticed in these is for the Jeskai Ephemerate decks. This is how little I actually look at Jeskai Ephemerate as well. So JN, you'll be able to confirm if this has been like this for quite a while. But the fully removing, I always assumed they just ran 8 1 mana removal spells, like 4 Bolt, 4 Scred. But both lists here have like shaved quite heavily on those. And I feel like, I don't know if that's now the norm or what.
Yeah, so I think that they're playing like main deck 1 to 2 Destroyable and then 1 to 2 Breath Weapon nowadays because of Glitters and Mono Red. Like Breath Weapon is good versus Mono Red, Destroyable is good versus Glitters. I don't know. It's kind of funny because FAMs used to be pretty bad versus the Jeskai deck, and now that they're playing Breath Weapon, Destroy Evil, and Murmuring Mystic, which are all cards that are awful against FAMs. So it's kind of a their deck's very different than it used to be.
And it seems like they're cutting down on the 1 mana removal, which obviously would be pretty good against you guys for obviously the killing the familiars and killing all the relevant creatures and all that sort of stuff. So you're definitely winning out there.
For sure.
Union of the Third Path's always been a funny one to me, which I always under-respect, like, I do not respect this card at all, but then every time I verse it, I'm always playing an aggressive deck, and the one of Union always gets me. Every time.
Yeah. So I think part of it is that card is an answer to Guardian of the Guildpact, so you don't have to put the Kenku in your deck. So you can just loop that over and over again to beat the Guardian from Coggates.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's anything else interesting. I guess Toxin Analysis appearing again in Gardens for some god-known awful reason. Yeah, people still keep playing it, and I still don't understand why, but, your Crypt Rats is already a solid card. It does not need to be made better by making you have, like, more cards at it. Throwing cards at Crypt Rats doesn't make it better. It's already pretty good. But, I guess...
Yeah. I just think there's so little cost to playing it as well, just because it replaces itself.
There is, but...
And then, like, the upside of it's just...
I think...
Yeah, I don't know.
My big problem with that, the big cost of playing it is the space. Your space is a million draw spells, a million removal, and then you kind of, like, I've got no other room. So if you're running Toxin Analysis, like, I want to know where you found space to put this card in. But...
Especially at 2, I guess. Like it's more than just sticking a 1 of in. What have they cut to fit it in?
Like
bargain or something.
Yeah, they're only running for.
I know that's still fine.
Yeah, they're still. I think
Oh.
it looks like removal of some description. Like there's no spin
It's
and
the
darkness.
spin and darkness is right, yeah.
No spin and darkness, no snuff out in this list. They're on 3 defiles, 4 cast down. Like the removal. The removal, to be fair, for Gardens as of late, it's been all over the spot. Like some run 2 snuff out, 2 spin and darkness, 2 cast downs, 4 defile. And then some run no snuff out, no spin and darkness, and run fucking toxin analysis in your deck. But, you know, it's all over the spot, to be honest.
I guess if you're looking at it like it is the spin and darkness slot, obviously, worst case, it just replaces itself with the clue. It sort of still gives you the life gain that you would miss off spin and darkness if you can stick it on a crit rat or a hunter or a troll or something like that. Obviously, a bit slower. But yeah, I see what you mean. It's an awkward card because it's outwardly it's not amazing, but it's just a lot of little, like the cost is so low for everything that it does.
True enough. But yeah, that's about it. I guess an appearance for Jeskai Glitters as well in 10th. It took me a while. I don't know why when I was writing the things this morning, it took me a while. I stared at this deck and I'm like, why is Boros running Frogmite and Mer Enforcer? And then I'm like sitting here, I'm like, why are they running Razor Tide Bridge? Like, what is got Thought-casting? I'm like, oh wait, it's got Thought-casting. It literally took me like I'm not even over exaggerating. It must have took me about 10 minutes to realise this was Jeskai Glitters for some unknown reason. But it did. Anyways. Yeah. And that's all I have about this exciting Friday challenge. I'm actually quite glad this is still here and here to stay. Obviously, as JN commented when the Friday challenge got announced, we'll be on 10 challenges in 2 years, and this will be a 3-hour long podcast. So,
Yep.
So we're not far off. So you might have to become a mainstay guest and fill in sometimes just for some challenges while we go like eat and sleep, and then we'll get up and take over.
Yeah, it's just going to be 24/7 challenge reviews.
Yeah, exactly.
Going all week long, yeah.
I think, to be fair, like this Friday challenge makes a lot more sense to me than like that backup one on the Sunday. It seems like this surely should have come first. Like the first thing they should have done is just stuck another challenge on Friday before putting 2 on the Sunday. But it's definitely good to have.
Well, the Sunday thing is a little weird because they want to maximize the prizes, but they also can't have the prizes scale for some reason. I think there's some legal reason they can't do that, and so yeah, it's a very awkward scenario where now people are just double queuing and it's a bit of a mess. But
yeah, I think that's what we were saying. There must be some law, obviously for the UK law. Like I don't think there's no issue with that, but it must be some countries. Obviously, you can't have them scale. I'd assume it would be US law, but because it is an odd feature to not be able to have.
Or even just have it like fire as a 32 or a 64. Like say it's either this or this, depending on how many players. But yeah, there's clearly something stopping it.
And it's all because grinders couldn't get out of bed on Christmas Day and play that Sunday challenge like 5 months ago, and now we're stuck with 2 challenges.
That 164 that didn't fire.
Yeah, that 164 that. Well, to be fair, wasn't there one like 3 months ago that didn't fire, but it was because the American changing clock time, like it moved an hour or something like that.
All right.
Yeah.
So Jane didn't get out of bed.
Daylight savings time.
So moving on to the Saturday challenge, the Saturday 32. This was on the 4th of May. 54 players. First place was Mogwart. Hamuda run it back once again. Second place was Walls. Third and fourth were both Blue Black Fair. 5th and 6th were both Kuldotha. 7th was Blue Black Terror, and 8th was Ultratron. And then the 2 near misses. 9th was Cyclestorm, and 10th was Gardens. GN, what thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean Hamuda's crushing again to the surprise of no one. I guess the deck that is most interesting to me is this Walls in second place. So Terminus is a player who basically just doesn't care what everybody else is doing. Because basically all the Walls players are playing for Generosent as like a backup plan. Lines up really well against Terrors, makes your Winding Ways and Lead to Stampedes better, stuff like that. But he is just not playing them at all, I think. He's not playing them at all. He's just trying to go full combo mode. So cool to see.
Seems obviously worked out for him here.
I always struggle with the combo walls to like see what's new between the deck lists because there's just so many like one ofs, two ofs. I feel like I have to take ages looking at each deck list to like, oh, he's trying this or oh, he's cut that. But yeah, Generathon's definitely a big cut.
Sprout Swarm in the sideboard. I don't know. I wouldn't know if that was common or not, as I'm stared at walls very often. But interesting.
I've
one
never
for
seen
sure.
that. That is wild.
The Future Sight best card in limited. The first pickable common because it just wins every game. Yeah, I think for me, obviously, it's cool to see Combo hitting back after that first challenge. That's pretty control heavy. Ultratron making a top 8 on Magic Online is pretty big to see. It's something we don't see very often, just because of how clicky and how long it takes for Ultratron to win if people make you play out. It was a pretty interesting like split list as well, like split into just 2 crop rotations and then with the Roan's Grim Search as well. And then try and Stream of Thought in the sideboard, which I haven't seen Ultratron play before.
Yeah, I believe this is. I could be wrong. Jane will be able to correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this is Callie's list on his like Patreon, his latest one, which is not trying map right. Is this
there's no maps.
Yeah, it's the list that's running no maps and going for stirring and the crop rotations to sort of get the Tron lands out. And then I believe this Stream of Thought is that's the Magic Online sort of nod. It's a way.
Okay.
It's a way of bringing in case of obviously clock considerations.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clever. I don't know who came up with that, but that's actually a pretty clever idea because it beats all counter spells and it beats Graveyard Hate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it doesn't beat Graveyard Hate because you still have to execute the combo, but
Yeah.
it just helps on the clock a lot. So.
Yeah. So,
It's sort of like you don't have to use it as a win con as well. If you're in a place where you can't combo off, but you need to like shuffle card, if you've tried a few too many times, you need to shuffle stuff back in. You can use it on yourself, right? To shuffle like some key pieces back in. So it seems pretty versatile. But yeah, Ultratron is a sweet one to see.
My only interesting thought is Crystal Grotto over the new, is it Python Conduit or whatever it's called from Outlaws, which is the Surveil version. The Surveil version of the like the Shimmer and Grotto land. I guess is another interesting thing for me. Because this deck, to be fair to me, seems to fit it perfectly. You can get cards in the graveyard that you want in the graveyard, and I don't know, it sort of helps with finding things a bit better. I don't know. That's one thing.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty real cost to having the Surveil. Like I play Modern sometimes, where like end of turn you'll fetch a Surveil land, and you'll see your like last shock land on top of your deck. You have to either mill it or draw it, and you're like, no, I wanted this in my deck for later. And so I think there is some downside to having Surveil over Opt.
But to me, surely it can't like. I agree. Modern, like obviously you get those awkward scenarios because the decks are full of random one-offs because the draw's that good, you know, your mana base is that good and all that sort of stuff. But when half your deck, apart from the one Blood Fountain, one Conjurer's Bauble, you've got a bunch of 4-ofs, and do you know what I mean? Like unless you hit that one-off makeshift munitions one in every 100 games or whatever, like do you know what I mean? I feel like it's fairly free. Like milling over a Mare Retriever for later is probably a bit better, right? Or digging that bit deeper. But
I'm the wrong person to ask about Ultratron, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I was just grasping at straws.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I guess would to me would be interesting to see moving forward. But sweet to see, regardless. I do believe that Ambush basically just was like, here's his list, and I'm just gonna rock Callie's list, and obviously worked out with the top 8.
And then I think my last bit for this challenge is just again a big shout out to Tyru for coming 9th with Cycle Storm. Basically the only Cycle Storm player that we see constantly like tearing up challenges. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Obviously I tried this list this week, and yeah, I got even more respect for Tyru. Like this deck is just on hard mode. Like, not even just the main deck. Like, the game 1 plan is, like, honestly, Tyru must win 90% of game 1s, I would imagine, because the deck's so free. But post-board, with that sideboard configuration of basically not destroying any relics or what have you, and just having basic, like, you don't have 13 card sideboard because the 2 basic lands in the side, like, and everything's just infinitely harder and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm all for it. Crack on, you do you, and you have done it extremely well, but that deck is not for me.
What is the relic game plan? Then you just go through it
Yeah, go through it or Vision Charm it at the end of turn or before you combo off, phase it out.
with the one-off vision charm.
Yep.
But
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think there's this weird sub game that you get into when you're playing against Cycle Storm with Relic, where if they put a spell onto the stack, you have to decide if you want to, like, if they put what's the name of the ritual?
songs.
Songs of the Damned.
Yeah.
If they put Songs of the Damned on the stack and you crack your Relic in response, then they Songs of the Damned in response to your crack, then it's bad for you. But if you wait till they Reaping and then you crack, and then they have another Reaping, it's also bad for you.
Yeah.
So you have to like guess which piece of their combo they're bottlenecked on. And so Tyrub is really, really, really good at that deck. So he can keep people guessing.
I guess the game
it's
plan
mega.
is the Grizzly Survivor as well, in a weird way. Like, wouldn't come in against many decks, but you can basically just, I'm going to play this guy and cycle a bunch and attack and kill you. But I can't imagine that happens very much against, like, I'd say, like, interactive decks. But generally, yeah, it is this sort of sub-game guessing, and yeah, that's not for me. I'd just rather just ingot you with that thing gone, I'm moving on. Next problem. Easy as that. I guess the one thing I want to know is that Hamoud has obviously went back on the Crackland Shaman, which some great success, obviously, to fight the increased red pilots of, you know, they're everywhere. Definitely seems to be working out. Gone back off the Candy Trail, which makes sense, obviously, if you're back on Crackland Shaman. But very little different to the list, and still on Tramways, which I'm a big fan of. And back on Faithless Luton, which I guess when you're running 2 Pilferers and a Crackland Shaman and all that, and like a Duress, there's a lot more fodder. With now all the increased random 1-offs or 2-offs, you've got a lot more fodder to kind of just speed up the deck and also get rid of dead cards if you're against a slower deck. So
I guess with the Shaman, like, because you've gone with the Tramways, like, the artifact count is like starting to get pretty low. Obviously you've got the Pilferers probably pull quite a big part of this here, like be able to stack them off and get a couple of artifacts, or even just like throw them in and let them die. But yeah, only at like six actual artifacts plus 5 lands now, and then you're then leaning on your Pilferers and your Deadly Disputes.
Yeah, I guess the bonus is probably because it's more specifically for mono red. It's not the and like you don't need like you only need really 1 or 2. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not where you're not going to be hitting walls where you're gonna have to sacrifice 5 or 6 artifacts to make sure the all 4s die or whatever. But pretty sweet to see. I'm always glad to see Crackland Shaman. I'm a big fan of that card in that deck, and happy to see they're still in the it's still in the Tramway station as well.
How does it go against walls? You just have to be faster than them, basically. You just try and combo off faster than them.
Pretty much, it's just a race and hope you have Fiend. Fiend's just house it. Just I'll just rip your which combo bit you are, because it's quite nice because you can sack it to Deadly. You don't care about the Deadly Dispute Mesmeric Fiend interaction, like doing it on the stack. You can just take the Axebane, for example, and then sit there. And then when you know they've got that piece back, like another piece, like they found another Axebane, you can just Deadly Dispute it anyways, and then unearth it and take the other piece. Like you have that interaction to just take the piece that the bottlenecked on. That's how I find it when it plays out, anyways. And my last 4 is 3rd and 4th Fairies decks. Both have 2 Dark Rituals in the main.
Just want to get that Thorn out super fast, I guess.
Some matchups you just need that turbo something. Thorn, Murmuring Mystic. Just play Ninja out, that's what it is.
I suppose, yeah.
Was one of these...
go on, Gian.
Was one of these carves? We were talking about this the other day, and we're like, that seems like a stupid idea. And then one of these players, the carves was maybe a different challenge top 8 with the Dark Rituals, but... Yeah, I don't really understand it. Like, back when you had the initiative, black initiative cards legal,
Mm.
playing 4 Dark Ritual in your Fairies deck made sense, but
Mm.
I don't know. I feel like you're asking for trouble. You're just gonna top deck Dark Ritual on turn 10 and then be very sad.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's like, even if you have it in your opener, there's not that many like draws that make it good. It's literally like 3 Thorns and I guess the one of Murmuring Mystic. Like Turbo Out and Ninjas like on turn 2 is not that great when you then don't have your spell stuff sprite up for the turn 2 play and
Mm.
you'll just die.
Yeah, and even then
Um,
you go like turn 2 Dark Ritual, Murmuring Mystic. The opponent just untaps Snuff Out. Go
Yeah.
like
exactly.
not great.
Maybe it's a way to keep your life from Snuff Out. That's the real secret. So you can play
Hard cast
Snuff Out,
Snuff Out.
hard cast Snuff Out, so you don't die to mono red. That's what it is. Don't worry, guys. I'll keep you in check.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
guess,
seems
yeah.
odd though. In all seriousness, makes absolute no sense to me. But I ain't no fairies player, that's for sure.
Yeah, obviously, like the upside, like the turn 2 Thorn is obviously very
Mm.
good, but like surely that's a super low chance of happening with only 3 Thorns and 2 Dark Rits. So yeah, it is a confusing one.
But yeah, that's kind of all I've got to mention on this challenge. Anything else you want to add, GM, before we move on?
Nope, don't think so.
Sound. Moving on to Sunday
Uh,
64.
Yeah, so Sunday the 5th of May, this one had 67 players. First place was Gardens, second place White Weenie, third Jeskai Glitters, fourth was Tireless Tribe, fifth was Colgate, sixth was Boros Glitters, seventh was Ponza, and eighth was Mono Blue Terror. And then 2 near misses, ninth was Madness, and 10th was FAMS, piloted by GN himself. Go for it, GN. What do you think about that?
This looks pretty interesting. I mean, there's Tribe in 4th place. I think is the most notable thing here.
Yeah.
And Ponza in 7th. We haven't seen Ponza in a long time. I actually lost to that Ponza player in the twist to the surprise of absolutely nobody. Yeah, pretty rough.
Are you telling me Ponza's a bad matchup for Familiars? Is that what you're telling me?
Might be just a little bit bad. Yeah.
I don't know why. The 4 Azorius Chancery seemed perfect fit for Ponza. I don't know. Perfect.
Yeah, I may have gotten my Azorius Chancery Thermocarcid on turn 2. Not a great feeling.
It's probably a deck as well that you won't run into that often. Like nowadays, it's gone's the heyday of Ponza, but obviously still is playable in Pauper apparently.
Yeah, I mean, you can crush the control decks, and then maybe if you have a good sideboard plan against red with a bunch of breath weapons or something, it can work. But I think the deck is not quite as powerful as most of the other stuff going on in the format.
Yeah, I think that's basically where they landed with four breath weapons, 3 weathers, and then a cast into the fire in the sideboard. Just hope breath weapons enough to carry you against the red deck.
Yeah, I always find Ponza funny though. It always looks like it's just trapped in like 4 years ago. Like apart from Ent, it hasn't really changed. Like, and it still just seems people just either like to roll dice or it just seems so underpowered. Like when it gets, Alter Saw into Borden Pie into Avenger Hunter, you're like, wow, this deck is broken. But then you look at it and you're all right, okay, I'm gonna Borden Pie and I'm gonna hit my Utopia Sprawl and then my Borden Pie is getting bolted or whatever, and then I'm just like, okay, this deck is absolutely ass. But then, yeah, people just like to roll the dice, I guess, sometimes, and obviously worked this time.
I think it's good draws. They're just so high powered though. Like if you just turn 1 Sprawl, turn 2 blow up your opponent's land, turn 3 Cascade Guy or Avenging Hunter, like what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you keep 7 every game, you can easily win a tournament with Ponza. The problem is you mulligan not very well and you mulligan a lot. So.
Yeah.
And sometimes your opponent plays indestructible artifact lands, and then you're like, well, my early game's screwed. I guess I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, the old 4-mana Ripit Growth with Acid Moss targeting a bridge.
I think my first thoughts on this is obviously it's a super diverse top 10. Like there's no repeated decks in the top 10. And a lot of it's stuff like we haven't seen in a while, like Tribe, like Ponza, like Mono Blue Terror. You just don't see it that often in Pauper at the moment. Tribe especially is really good to see. I think it was Season of Mists who top 8'd here with it. And the list was quite an interesting tribe list. Obviously the four escape tunnels are now just a mainstay in Tribe. It seems like a card that was just printed for that deck. But his sideboard as well, I thought was quite interesting with cards like Mystic Remora, and Stern Dismissal and Piracy Charm. There was a lot of like cards that were like pretty pointed at certain matchups, but just stuff you don't often see. Mystic Remora especially, it's like every Commander player knows what it is, but you don't really see it in any format other than Commander.
You're not going to mention the 3 Squadron Hawks in the main deck?
Yeah, I think that's a cool. It's a cool number, to be fair. I believe Teasdale was saying earlier that he, in one of the earlier challenges, he was on 4, and has cut 1 for some reason.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, to be fair, because I've interestingly enough, the only reason I checked it out was because I versed him on the Friday. He was double queuing the Friday challenge while also playing a league in the challenge, and I versed him while I was playing Cycle Storm, and I know he came 26th on the Friday, which was pretty interesting because you can actually see the differences in the list. So they ran 4 Squadron Hawk, 4 Modern Age, no Circular Logics, 2 Impulses, 2 Dizzy Spells, and 4 Strands, a Shadow Rift, 4 Whiteouts, was on 4 Basic Planes and 4 Preordains.
It's like a completely different list.
Like, it's like completely different.
Yeah.
Running like Crimson Acolytes, Obsidian Acolytes in the side, 3 Mystic Remoras, 3 Lawrence Escapes. Like, all these cards are just like not in the not in the Saturday list, the Sunday list. Which is pretty interesting to see, like how obviously that deck's developed for him over the weekend. Pretty sweet. Especially landing on 3 Squadron Hawks, definitely an interesting one for me. But yeah, pretty sweet. I do think though, to be honest, my one thing that I do find interesting is that I do think they should be on more basic planes, and they were on the Friday. They're on 4 basic planes. But I do think with Escape Tunnel now, there's probably more games that would win by just, here is my Tireless Tribe, here is my Inside Out plus Escape Tunnel, like you did. Like that, there'd be more games that they would just aggressively win those matchups. So maximize on that is probably a good thing. But then I guess it probably makes the whole Circular Logic Dispel Protection plan a bit worse with so many planes. But
I think the main issue is keeping, like, you can't keep a hand with just white mana.
Yeah.
And you have only 19 lands. So I think pretty commonly you're going to keep a hand with like 1 land and a bunch of cantrips to dig out of it. And obviously you can't do that if it's a plains.
True. Maybe they just need to look at how many lands they're playing and, treat Escape Tunnel as a spell, maybe. But then obviously you're in space. But interesting for sure. And it's nice to see that a deck like this, obviously that doesn't see a lot of play. Like, obviously we see an Escape Tunnel and people are like, oh, well, it's obviously, its main thing is obviously Tireless Tribe. It's perfect fit for this. But then it was still really nowhere. And then obviously to then get it almost like a weekend of it where you see how much it's changed is pretty interesting to me. Not only that, it's also the 10th most played deck over the weekend.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, to be fair.
Obviously only 7 pilots, but still, I guess that more shows how much other decks were played, but that's a story for another time.
Yeah, Tribe in particular, like we were saying on the manager side, it's sort of just a mono blue deck but it wins with a white card. Which is why the mana always seems so awkward. But yeah, it's really sweet to see it do well. It's such a like an old school pauper deck. It's existed forever, basically since Eventide when Inside Out come out. Yeah, and still great to see something that's sort of that historic 2 pauper still just doing really well.
Yeah. I also like they've still got the classic Giga Draws as that's how I'm beating like blue decks or whatever, or just gonna Giga Draws people end of turn. That's all it takes, or upkeep or whatever. Like, just classic, just a classic card.
And another card that makes more planes really awkward though.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty sweet. Anyways, Sweet to see, obviously, White Weenie, I guess, as well, coming second.
J Waves crushing it as usual.
Yeah. Fairly standard list for J-Waves, to be fair. Like, obviously, now, obviously, cemented the 8 inspectors, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess it maybe even might be a time to even look at revisiting the Lunark veteran with obviously how many red pilots are everywhere, but obviously, again, space is pretty tight.
I think honestly, like the red at the moment, the way it's built is like the 1-2 inspector bodies are just as good as the guy that's going to get 2 or 3 life. Yeah, especially making their cyborg cards like End the Festivities and stuff just not really playable against your little white weenie deck. Essentially, all it's killing nowadays is Squadron Hawks or maybe a Rafine's Informant. Yeah, just 8 inspectors is just really good.
Who'd have thought
For sure.
it? But yeah, other than that, I've got nothing really to add personally about this sort of top 8. Obviously, sweet, diverse, always great to see. Nothing really too exciting. Like Corgate looks fairly stock. No outlaw medics, I guess, is one thing to note. Ponza obviously looks like Ponza did about a decade ago.
The Black Red Madness in 9th is playing a 1-of highway robbery.
Woo!
So we finally got there saying this might be playable in Madness. It is only a 1-off. But yeah, is a sweet card, especially in the Madness deck.
It's a start.
How did you find this challenge, Shane? Obviously, you've came 10th. What do you remember? What you played against? Was it particularly skewed or?
So I remember my 2 losses were to the Mono Blue Terror by Selkos. I got crushed. It was like not remotely close. And then I lost to Ponza, which I got crushed. It was not remotely close. But to be honest, it's kind of hard to remember because you're double queuing 2 matches at the same time. Everything kind of blends together. But it wasn't like all mono red or all. I think it's pretty diverse for the most part these days.
Which is interesting because obviously the data shows that obviously there was 22% of the overall meta for the weekend was mono red, but obviously when you split that down to each individual challenge, it's actually realistically probably not that many.
Yeah, and I think part of it is that like mono red isn't the winningest deck, and so if you're like, in the 2-0 bracket, the 4-0 bracket, you're less likely to see mono red than you would otherwise.
For sure. But yeah, I guess did the Selka mono blue list, which obviously touch on shortly, did it sort of feel worse for the fans' perspective because it's kind of cut the deep analysis and just went for like a Delver sort of take on it, like just out tempo everything? Did it feel worse than just the deep analysis, or was it just unfortunate the way your hand fell, or what? How was it? Or did you just not find very good?
I mean, my draws were a little awkward, but that matchup is just not very good for me, especially with no circle protection. One thing worth noting though is they're not playing Boomerang, and if they play Boomerang, it's extremely difficult because you can't really play around it, and then they just bounce your bounce line back to your hand and kill you. I don't know. The list seemed fine. I didn't have any particular notes about it, but just
the 8th place Mono Blue Terror, the one that snuck in, is quite a weird list to be fair. It's like fully just I'm gonna go all in on the like the aggressive tempo slide, with obviously 4 boomerangs, but also 2 force spikes and 2 artful dodges as well. Just terror as fast as possible, get the damage in, and hope the artful dodges will just get that last 5 points in. To me, this is probably the way you have to start building Mono Blue Terror now, just to be as aggressive as possible and to try and get the game over with.
Yeah, I think something close to this is definitely probably the place to be. Like obviously as we'll touch on Selkos list further down, but sort of like a tempo-y deck without just I'm going to play stuff as fast as possible and maximize on my big threats and try and push as much damage as possible is definitely the way to go. And Boomerang's probably the key piece in that and hopefully trying to force spike people. You've just got to hope your matchups are right and go from there. Definitely seems like the way to play this.
I feel like we've sort of surpassed this still has 2 deep analyses in, but I think it probably just shouldn't. And obviously we've surpassed the Murmur and Mystics being in the main deck of Mono Blue Terrors now. I think that's just definitely just not the way to go.
Mm.
You have to just be lucky, not mulligan like Pons that just keep seven card hands all the time.
Good place to be. Anything else before we move to the 32?
No,
I
I'm
don't
good.
have anything.
So Sunday the 32, the double Q challenge, as GN has said. First place was the man himself, GN on fans. Second place was Corgates, piloted by Hyson. Third place was Dredge. Fourth was Blue Black Fate. Fifth was Mono Blue Terror. Sixth was Jeskai Glitters. Seventh was Blue Black Fate. Eighth was Boros Glitters. And then the near misses. Ninth was Kuldotha, and 10th was another copy of Boros Glitters. Yeah, go for it, GN.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Top 8. I'll obviously love to see myself at the top, but there's lots of different names here. So there's Hyson in second place, obviously, and then Walker in 6th, and then Bako in 7th, which are all cool. I played against Bako in the quarters, and I played against Dredge in the semis, and then obviously Hyson in the finals. So honestly, I mean, Blue Black Fairies is slightly favored for fans, but the other two matchups are extremely favored for me, so I felt very lucky to get those matchups.
The Dredge list in particular is quite an interesting one. It's not just like the normal stock Dredge that we've been seeing. It's got quite a few new cards in. One of them is Conduit Pylons that Teasdale mentioned earlier, which is the filter land that surveils. It's also got 3 Desperate Bloodseekers in, which is a 2-mana 2/2 lifelink from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, that mills 2 cards when it enters. So sort of like a Maya Triton-ish card. Obviously pretty good against the red decks, giving you a bit of time and milling.
Also doesn't die to end the festivities as well.
Yeah. It's also playing 2 Riven Necromass, which we've sort of seen like here and there, but not very often. Which is a 5/5 Death Touch for 7. But you can cast it for a single black if you've got a bunch of creatures in your graveyard, essentially.
It's the Black Terror in that cycle, and it is just not doesn't see often played. It's usually in like Tortured Existence and things like that. But it's interesting to see it here in Dredge for sure.
But yeah, so quite an interesting take on a Dredge list, and to see it come third is obviously really cool as well. The one cool card for me was the Flash of Defiance in the sideboard, which is something we obviously haven't seen or haven't noticed before in Dredge. But it's essentially a 2-mana sorcery with flashback of 1 red and pay 3 life. And players can't block with green and or white creatures this turn. So it seems pretty big against like decks like Corgate, who can just jump up the board and then start bashing you in the air. If you get like a Necromass and a Troll in play, you can just flash this back and dome them. Pretty cool.
Interesting thing for me is the 13 lands and 1 billion land cyclers.
Yeah.
So it's running what 10 is it? 3 Olafons, 3 Ents, 4 Trolls.
Yeah. And
then 13 lands, along with like Rubber Belt Maverick, to sort of fix its draws a little bit. Definitely interesting. Still going down the whole land cycler plus Exhume plan, and I guess that's where the conduit pylons sort of come into it with only 13 lands. If you have Forest Pylon, it sort of like helps you filter your mana for any extra lands that you do get.
Yeah. So I think the pylons, I think this list is from a player named Giorgio Combo, who's an Italian player. And against me, I think all 3 games actually, their turn 1 play was play the pylon with the trigger on the stack, activate a land cycler. And so you get to filter you get to filter your tap lands, like for whatever mana you need, maybe like black, red, black, green, whatever, and you get to surveil afterwards, which is nice.
Definitely an interesting list. I wonder how the Necromasses perform generally over the league, like over the challenge, because it's definitely a interesting choice here that just sort of filters away from obviously your game plan of my game plan 1 is to probably exhume something if possible. Then my game plan 2 is to mill a bunch to then dread return a bunch of stuff, like Lotleth trying to kill them. But I don't know how it actually plays out like that, because it doesn't really interact with the deck almost by obviously having creatures. For sure.
Yeah, I think Writhing Necromass, the piece of text I think people forget about that card is that it doesn't die to stuff out.
Mm.
Like basically every creature, if it's a black creature, it automatically gets like +1/+1 effectively because it doesn't die to snuff out.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, but I think that's a consideration. Although
Mm.
I don't know. It's hard to know exactly what the correct way to build this deck is because there's so many different options.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you see something like this and it's built so like differently from the ones that we have been seeing. It definitely throws a spanner into the works of where you should be at on Dredge.
For sure.
Other things to obviously we'll touch on obviously the fact that Heissen's back. So Heissen came second obviously with Colgates with 2 Outlaw medics in. Other than that, pretty stock looking list. With the Optum with the red sideboard with like Morstar, with the breath weapons and Pyroblast on the side. And
and still cutting down the journeys as well for the extra like destroy evil effect. Seems to be pretty big in Colgates at the moment, obviously for the mainly for glitters, but obviously comes in against like Terra and stuff like that as well.
How did you find having Heissen resurrected, Jane? Was it interesting matchup like a Colgate Farmers matchup, or?
So I was streaming on like Wednesday. It's gonna be a funny story. So and Walker came in the chat and is like, "Fams is so bad, you just lose to Pyroblast constantly." I'm like, "Yeah, you're not entirely wrong, but I have 1 deep analysis in my sideboard that I bring in against the Pyroblast decks." And so I added a second one to my deck based on Walker's comments, and then I drew my deep analysis a bunch versus Colgates, because the way Colgates beats you versus Fams is by countering all of your card draw and then leaving you with all your Fams and Faithfuls and everything else in play. And so I drew deep analysis against him, and I wouldn't say it was very close, but yeah, it's nice to be battling against a PFP member in the finals. I remember watching. I don't know if you remember Zimplify. He was streaming one of the challenges with Turbo Initiative, and he got paired into Weber in the finals. And the chat was like, "Show the PFP who's boss." So it's always a fun time.
Yeah, it does seem to fit the bill. Obviously, a PFP member being the final boss fight, obviously to take the win for sure. But yeah, also I guess Heissen he fully must have been resurrected because he did reach out to the podcast and we're sort of speaking about having him on. So that'll be another interesting thing. So definitely fully committed to coming back, and we'll hopefully see him more in the challenges. So, woo! I don't think there's anything else too exciting to add. I guess we can touch on Selka's sort of list, which is sort of similar to the list on the other Sunday challenge, which is sort of basically tempo orientated, no deep analysis, just I'm going to mill a bunch and put some amount of threats in play. Interestingly enough, obviously no boomerangs in this particular list, just 1 Echo and Truth, 4 snaps as sort of their bounce spells of choice. But I think boomerang's probably a card that should be considered in these sort of lists, as it does just free win a lot of games, like Jane mentioned, with bouncing your Karoo lands or just basically time walking people. Yeah.
I think the downside to Boomerang is that it looks really bad against mono red. Like if mono red goes turn 1 hasted guy or turn 2 make 3 1/1s, like what are you going to target with your Boomerang? You're going to target their land and then die to all their stuff? Or you're going to target their stuff and just have them replay it out? So
I think the Boomerang in general, it does very much play into the I need to just go all in with this, because even if you're just on the draw, like as soon as you're on the draw, Boomerang's just not that good anymore. Like if you're on the play, it's really good, but yeah, on the draw it drops off, and then against like decks where all the guys just cost 1, like in particular mono red, again it's just even worse. Looking at this top 8 in general, it sort of did play out quite well for you being on Fams, because there just isn't that many Pyroblasts. Like from what we've been seeing recently, I guess even in the other top 8s that we've spoke about, there's a lot of Pyroblast in the sideboard.
Mm.
Where I think in this, is it just there's the Corgates, obviously, with Hyson, and then the Jeskai Glitters and the Boros Glitters, and I think that's it.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened, but Pyroblast are missing, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is good
phenomenal.
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been talking to people. I don't think FAMS has been as good as it is now
Mm.
for like probably since I started playing the deck. So like
Mm.
I don't know, what is that, 3 years? Just like the way it lines up against the Boros Glitters deck is very good because you aren't going to die to their burn or their beatdown plan because you have faithfuls and solid like blockers and stuff. And then the glitters is just like not very good versus you because you have 4 snaps in your deck.
Yeah.
And so
But yeah, I don't think there's anything too exciting after that. Is there anything spicy out of Baco's list? Probably not. I guess there's a moment of Craven. A one-off moment of Craven.
That's pretty old tech against like mono red aggro decks. I guess pretty good against glitters as well, right? Unless they put on the Skyfish.
Yeah, and that's about as interesting, I guess. Move the Extractor Confession to the side. Is another point, but other than that, nothing too extraordinary.
yeah, he is playing the 4 Fairy Seers, which he
4 Fairy
normally
Seers.
plays 3. So I mean it's like a minor change, but mostly the same stuff.
The last thing that I wanted to touch on from this was just the 9th place Kuldotha list went like super all in on creatures. It cut down a lot of the burn. It cut out 2 of the Galvanic Blasts and 1 of the Chain Lightnings. And obviously added the new 4 Reckless Lackeys, but also added 2 Mog Raiders to go like fully Goblin slanted, I guess. Which is a pretty interesting take. Like the Kuldotha decks seem to just get more and more creature slanted and tighter on space. And this is even pushed even further to that extreme, I guess.
Soon they'll be adding Brightstone Ritual into the deck. Soon. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to be fair. Like, Voldaren Epicure is basically a goblin at this point, innit? Let's be honest. But interesting that they've kind of went down this route. It's more like, as I say, it's more like a Sly oriented, like old school goblins with a couple of burn spells in to just top it off. Seems like probably the way to go, but also in a sense, it's also probably the bit that people can fight or prepare for the most. To me, is always the creature side of things. Like, especially when you've got your Thrabins, you've got your people flooding the board early. Like, playing into that might not be the best thing, but I guess also Mog Raiders is also a good way of playing around that in a sense. Like, obviously, sack a goblin that's gonna die, make sure the Thrabin dies, or something along them lines is potentially like giving it reach in a way.
Yeah, I think especially like against the Thraben decks in particular, being able to just send with everything, and then whatever they block, you just make their blocks really bad. Is definitely like an appealing place to be. But it is a big cost. Like, you're pretty reliant on the rebirths with that Mog Raider to give you enough fodder to like justify doing that. Because essentially the Thrabins are eating a guy, but they're just gonna eat one guy rather than eat a guy every turn. But yeah, also triggers Blast Runner, which is not nothing. Like, you can sack a goblin to trigger the Blast Runner and then pump it up and get in for a big chunk. But yeah, interesting to see. Like you said, they just keep getting more and more towards like the more old school goblin lists. But obviously with newer, better goblins.
So you're saying Mog Conscripts is not on the horizons? Is that what we're saying?
I mean, it's getting pretty close, right? You've got a lot of other guys that just work really well with a 1-mana 2/2 that can't attack alone. Like, you play a Mog Conscripts and then a Reckless Lackey the next turn and just jam for 3.
That's it. We need to revisit old school goblins with newer goblins.
Yeah.
That's
the space is obviously always going to be the big issue. Like, here, we're just cutting the burn super hard, because there isn't really anything else you can cut. you're already tight on artifacts for the Kuldothr's.
Maybe that's it. Kuldothr's the cut.
It's also the best card in the deck, though. So
Nah, you'll be good. You'll be good. 2/2s.
Put some respect on Great Furnace's name, okay? Great Furnace is very good.
well, yeah, true. Kuldothr's the second best card in the deck.
But yeah, the mono red decks these days, one short note, they feel like they're in a pretty healthy spot because they're creature based, and so if you just either play to the board or play sweepers, you can beat them. Whereas the previous decks, you had to like play a bunch of Hydroblast to counter their card advantage and then answer the board. And so I feel like they're in a much better spot now than they used to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting how much the impulses fell off when you couldn't just like impulse attack with a buffed guy because you impulsed. Swiftspear really seemed to hold the impulses together, and now like you occasionally see maybe one as someone's like testing one.
Anything else on the Sunday 32? Do you want to describe anything from your amazing win other than what you've already said, or anything you would like to avoid that's not Ponza? Things like that.
Let's see. I'm looking through my past matchups to see if there was anything interesting. I played against Campo in round 1 in the mirror match, and I think he took my exact list and cut a remove soul for a Cyber Cryptomancer, which I thought was funny. Please do not do that if you're going to copy my list. I would recommend not doing that. But it is worth noting that, I don't know, I streamed the matches, but I made tons of mistakes this event. Like, I made game-losing mistakes in round 1. I made some bad plays in the finals. Like, I probably kept a bad hand in the semifinals. So if you're afraid of trying out FAMs, like, it's fine. Just make mistakes. The deck is broken. It'll carry you. It'll be fine.
And is that your advice for anyone wanting to pick up FAMs, or would you recommend checking out your streams, checking out, how you learn how to play? If you were going to recommend it, just let it carry you?
Probably if I was to recommend a resource, would just be the Familiars Discord, and then you can come in and ask more specific questions than just watching somebody stream. Because for me, that was the most helpful thing, just asking Callie and Zimp and Raptor and whoever, just what their thoughts are.
Totally reasonable. Can highly recommend the FAMs Discord. There is a lot of conversations about everything except FAMs. And also, to be fair, there is also a lot of discussions about FAMs just after. But yeah, there is a lot of, to be fair, general just people who are just very involved in Pauper, to be fair, and very much just have in-depth discussions about random things. And probably to know, it's probably where 99% of all the broken decks have came from. So yeah, highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, and I think most people are just like happy to share their knowledge. So ask some questions, I get some answers.
Would you like any other particular comments you would like aired before we move on to shout outs and obviously hot takes?
Nope.
No?
Yeah, not from me.
No? So, shout out obviously for, let's shout out Jane obviously first for obviously coming on. Obviously great, nice to have you. We'll obviously carry on shouting you out throughout this whole thing because it is great to have you, especially after the wins you've had over the past few weekends. So it's definitely great to see. Shout out to Hyson for coming back out the woodwork and, not only that, coming second. Now all we need is the spice back, as we keep saying about Weber every week. Pick up something spicy, not Corgates, not Fairies. I want to see them ephemerated Mormelks back. That's what I want. Bring it back, Tyson. Shout out to obviously all the grinds that we've mentioned throughout the whole entire thing. Obviously, keep doing what you're doing. It's making it interesting for us, for sure, and making our work easy. And then finally, speaking of making it easy, shout out to obviously Kirby for doing the immense amount of data crunching to show us all the pilots for the weekend, all the win rates, lose rates, all that sort of stuff. It is great and handy to have access to, for sure. Hot takes from last week?
Yeah, so my first one from last week was that more people would try and jump on the FAMs train and just jam the deck. Obviously, it's been doing really well. We've seen it basically top 8 in every week at least. But that wasn't true. It sort of went down. Less people played FAMs, and it still won and come 10th, even though GN was both of those.
Yeah, very much so. I think, to be fair, like the deck always has this kind of rap of being this hard to pilot deck, and obviously hard to play on Magic Online. I imagine the loops are very time consuming, which don't be put off because GN is an absolute trigger machine when it comes to obviously playing this deck Rapido. But to be fair, how many times would you say you actually won via actually comboing someone throughout your general play? Would you say very often or very rare? Or
I played 2 challenges this weekend. I probably comboed like 2 times, maybe.
Like it is basically just a blue-white mid-range deck with Ephemerate, and like as long as you can manage your Archaeomancer looping and all that sort of stuff, I imagine you're pretty fine. Like I played it and I lost because I made really bad mistakes and my opponents were better, not because I was sitting here combo looping and I timed out or anything. Like I was nowhere close to timing out while playing this deck, and I probably wouldn't have been even if I did 5-0. Like the deck is just a good blue-white deck that has a combo in it.
Yeah. I've been telling people are always afraid to play Fams, like, oh, I feel like I'm playing really poorly. And I just say, like, if you just play the most expensive card in your hand every single turn, you're going to be right like 90% of the time. So.
I think to be fair, I think that's where I went wrong playing it. I was like holding snaps when I could have cast a Muldrifter, and so I was like, I need this for this. Like, but then I realized like 2 turns later, why didn't I just draw a bunch of cards and I'd Archaeomancer this thing back and we're all sorted? And that was 90% of my problem. I was just too scared to cast spells. I was like, oh, I need this spell in case I die to this. I was like, yeah, this is just, I'm playing this awfully. Yeah.
If you draw enough cards, everything will be fine.
Exactly.
For sure.
My next hot take was that Gardens would pick up. Just due to obviously the popularity of certain decks like Kuldotha and things like that. And yeah, that didn't happen. It was like the same meta percentage, but it went down from 18 pilots to 16 pilots over the weekend, so kind of roughly the same. But yeah, it's just a deck that whoever plays it is playing it. There's no one really picking up other decks, I guess.
Yeah, we did see quite a few in the tops of the challenges. Like there was two on Friday, 1 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday, or 1 on each of the Saturdays, but none on the Sunday. But yeah, it's a weird one, Gardens. It sort of is either everywhere or just like teetering on the same numbers. My last one from last week was that Blue White Glitters will be back in the top 8. It definitely was not. People just don't seem to want to go all in on Blue White Glitters. They're just going all in on Mono Blue Terror instead and top 8 with that.
Yeah, the deck did get more reps because it literally fell off the map last week. There was 1 person playing it in the entire 4 challenges. You had 4 people playing it over the entire of 4 challenges. So you probably had the same person playing it over each challenge. But, you know, that's more people playing it, I guess.
Even those numbers are so small compared to where it came from. It's mad to see.
My last one was that Skred will be more popular next week. The blue-red Skred deck in particular was what I was referring to, which was 7 pilots over the weekend last week. Technically I am correct because 8 pilots over the weekend this weekend. So we had 1 more pilot, but it was still nowhere to be seen in the top results really.
Yeah, but he did quite well last week, right?
Yeah.
I think we mentioned it in at least a couple of the challenges. So it's interesting that it just not really went up after that performance, and then just didn't show up in any of the top 8 either.
It was Jeskai Ephemerate's time to shine, I guess, this week.
Yeah, I suppose that's a Skred deck of choice. So hot takes from next week, or for next week. Yep. My first one, I'm just going to stick on the same one because I think Blue White Glitters should be coming back. Everyone likes to just YOLO, hope to draw 7 cards and never mulligan. Blue White Glitters is probably the best deck. They're doing that, so we're saying it's going to be back in at least one of the top 8. It's about time.
GN, what would you like? Would you like a hot take?
All right, I don't know if this is hot enough for you guys, but we did see Mono Red was like a little bit above 22% of the metagame with like only 47% win rate, I think was Kirby's data. So my hot take is that Mono Red will be less than 10% of the metagame this weekend. I'm expecting that people will move off of it just because it's not very good and people have started to adapt, but Pauper players seem to be very stubborn, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. We do see that often. We're like saying, "Oh, surely no one's going to be on this deck, and then everyone's just still on it. Like 3 weeks later, they're still just jamming it.
Yeah.
But yeah, mono red especially is getting pretty hated on at the moment. Like we've seen with like Ponza and stuff like that, jamming 4 breath weapons and 3 weathers and stuff in the sideboards. Like every deck is just packing 4 mono red. So be interesting to see if it can maintain that huge percentage really that it is.
Yeah, hopefully it does decrease, and just because I think, to be fair, looking at the data obviously from Kirby's data, like it's very much like the top 5 decks are very heavily weighted, and it would be nice to see like a bit of 6 or 7, 8 or whatever decks having a good so many percent of the metagame, whereas it looked very inflated from mono red. But not that it's winning or anything. It's just obviously would be nice to just have a bit more major diversity. But yeah, it'd be interesting because it's not doing very well.
I think it's kind of hard to complain right now because for the longest time we had mono red, we had blue black terror, we had Coggates and Affinity, and if those decks were like combined like 70% of the metagame, so it's much better than it used to be.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think this meta's pretty. It's definitely a lot. I always say that the metagame's a lot faster than it ever has been, almost like in terms of like aggro-y sort of decks. But it's definitely in a healthiest position in terms of actual deck representation and all that sort of stuff. My hot take, hopefully it's hot take and comes true, is that Tribe will be more represented than it was the weekend, and will at least top 16 at one of the events. For reference, we had 7 pilots last week, 7 from 0 to 7 in absolutely no time. So I'm hoping it's the most played blue-white deck next week. That would be where I want it to be. JN, are you going to play Tribe next week?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'll be dusting off my planes and islands that I've never played in Pauper Challenges before and casting some Tribes.
That's it. That's what we want to see. Anything else to add, Reese, in particular?
No, nothing from me.
So JN, if you would like to shout out obviously where you can be found on your Twitter, the actual video, it is underneath your handle is underneath for your Twitter, for your YouTube, and for your Twitch. So if you want to check them out, but obviously if you want to say to the people who are listening, obviously where you can find yourself.
Yeah, so if you just type in like GN MTG on YouTube, all my links are under there. So easy way to find everything. But yeah.
Don't forget to subscribe to that channel as well. Always a bonus. Any closing comments you'd like to add obviously before we close out?
Nope, thanks for having me on.
Well, it's been great to have you on, and great to obviously another win. We'll see you again next week to either congratulate you for winning or mocking you for almost winning. It's usually how it goes. It's one or the other.
Either way, I set my sub notification or my follow notification to be your voice saying GN can only top 4, so Fams isn't ever going to win, which I thought was funny. So hopefully you're okay with that. But...
I'm perfectly fine with that. So guys, thank you all for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please do not forget to share it with your friends, your family, your local Pauper community, and also your local Pauper grinders, like GN here. If you are interested in attending our event on the 1st of June, like GN is going to obviously book his plane tickets right now. Please do not forget to buy your tickets now, and it'll be great to see us there. And that is all from us at Casting Commons. Until next time, do you want to close us out, GN?
Don't forget to stay hydrated.
Peace! Bye.